Hello and welcome to the Feed My Mind podcast. And as always, thank you for tuning into this frequency today. I'm your host, Anthony Ross, and I started this podcast because I am most passionate about two things in life: bringing out the best in others and having an open, curious mind. In this episode, I chat with Daniel Flynn, the co-founder and managing director of the social enterprise ThankYou. Many of you may have heard of the ThankYou story or consumed their products before. 10 years ago, Daniel and his co-founders came up with an idea that through selling bottled water, they could one day change the world in helping to eradicate poverty. Fast forward to today, and with over 55 products and having funded over $5 million in water access, sanitation and hygiene projects, the ThankYou brand is on a mission to change the world. For me, this was one of those conversations that really resonated, not only from the inspirational and passionate energy that Daniel shares, but from the genuine and practical nuggets of wisdom he's learned from his journey so far. We deep dive into what it takes to be successful, overcoming objections, how to push boundaries, the importance of vision, creating ideas with momentum, and so much more. I'd like to give a special thank you to local Melbourne artist Hawaii 94 for that beautiful song playing in the background. All right, it's time to feed your mind. G'day everyone and welcome to the Feed My Mind podcast today, and I'm very excited and very appreciative to be joined by Daniel Flynn, the co-founder and managing director of ThankYou. So Daniel, thank you for being here.
Hey, great to be part of the show.
No worries, thanks for being on. So it's been an absolutely fascinating story and a journey that you've been on over the last 10 years with the brand ThankYou. Are you able to give us a little bit of an introduction of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so look, who we are is interesting. I mean, we started with a really simple idea, and I think we've built and been humbled by the movement of people who've backed the idea. The idea was consumer product. It's real, it's big. We all spend literally collectively millions, actually billions on it every day. And at the same time, we live in a world where extreme poverty exists. We have families, children dying because they don't have access to basic human rights. And we started a social enterprise called ThankYou, and we give 100% of the profit and commit 100% of the profits from our products to helping end global poverty. It's a really simple idea. It turns out over the last 10 years, we learned just how hard it is to actually execute that idea, actually create products that scale and compete with some of the biggest brands in the world and then give the money away. It's been a roller coaster ride, but the idea is simple and so many people have bought into it and backed it, and that's probably the bit that just astounds us every day. It's amazing. And the word that you've mentioned several times was idea. So how did you come up with the idea? Yeah, look, there was one moment for me, and there was probably a few moments that led into the moment, but one defining moment where I'm sitting in front of my computer and I'm watching stories of kids who didn't have access to clean water. And there was a couple of stories which really struck a chord as kids. Really, they talked about their family and losing siblings, brothers and sisters to waterborne disease. And I had this one moment where I'm at my computer literally crying. I'm thinking, this is so wrong. How would I even mentally process losing my family, my sisters, and realizing it was the water. The water killed them. And that for me was this is so wrong. And the idea part was, it was seeing the direct comparison from the world water crisis, which in 2008 was 900 million people who didn't have access to clean water, and at the time, $50 billion spent globally on bottled water. Today, it's 140 billion, and I'm like, that is so dumb. That is so wrong. Like, those two water extremes existing on the same planet, and the idea began with bottled water, which I still say to this day is the dumbest product on the planet. We've now evolved. We've got 55 products. We are, well and truly much bigger than a water company, but it was the starting point. And, I think it was a confronting starting point to say to humans, hey guys, we are valuing something that we shouldn't, but what if we could use that and take the profit to help fund water projects? It's fantastic. And so you've seen the reality of the 900 million people living in poverty. It's resonated with you, and the impact that it would have. You said if you were in that situation yourself, how do you then go to starting it? Yeah, this is someone asked the other day, what's the best advice you have for someone with an idea? And I was like, look, this isn't groundbreaking, but just start. Like, do something right now. Like, before you get in the car, send an email. I told someone else. They liked it. Thought, oh, that's interesting. Got my computer out, started hacking some ideas out on a Word document, printed them out. Literally then started, we joke, but we didn't. We literally did this. We Googled how to start a bottled water company. We just started. And it was on that journey that it felt so possible, because we're like, well, this should be easy. And maybe that's that beginner's mindset, when you don't know how hard something is, you naively or childlike thinking, you just walk into it. And that's what we did. We walked into something much, much bigger than we ever realized, and kind of hacked our way through it.
Very, very, very interesting. So I know there's in your book, chapter 1, you've got some very, very interesting stories about how it started and some of the challenges along the way. Have you got one that sort of resonates with you the most, or one that sort of strikes you that was sort of a pivotal moment in the early stages of the company?
Yeah. Look, I think the greatest challenge we had was getting big business, so big retail, to buy into the idea. So everyone was happy to meet with us. Oh, cool, social mission. You want to change the world? That's nice. The challenge came when we said, yeah, but we've got a product and we want to get it to mass market. And everyone's like, well, no. You're up against some of the biggest brands in the world. Our shelf space is taken. You'd have to have so much money here and, big campaigns there for us to back you. And we're sitting here going, well, we don't have that. But come on, this is an awesome idea. It's going to change the world. My mum said she'd buy it. Who wouldn't buy it? But it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for retailers. And so for me, when you talk about what is the moment, there was so many, because for the first 3 years, we got knocked back from every national retailer in the country. In fact, it was the first 5 years we couldn't get our products into the 2 biggest supermarkets, Coles and Woolworths. So I'm so grateful for the independent supermarkets that backed us, the small cafes and outlets. That is how we built ThankYou. But to get to that mass scale, we were blocked time and time again. And to me, that was frustrating. In the book, we talk about, not only were we blocked, but we had issues. Like we had, manufacturers that messed up product, and we ended up doing product recalls, and other brands that, in fact, some retailers who liked the idea said no to us, then came out with their own product that went to funding water projects, others that promised ranging, and then when we produced product, they retracted that ranging. Our first 3 years were just a minefield of, setback, knockback, setback, knockback. And I was challenged by how hard it was just to even run a small business, and then how almost impossible it felt to break through into the kind of the big league, the mass market. And that to me was the greatest frustration of the first few years.
And what's interesting is all throughout the book, and you've just sort of spoken about it briefly, is the rejection and the objections that you're getting constantly.
Yeah.
And that's read even just the first couple of chapters of your book, there's enough to obviously deter most people from persisting further. So how are you able to push beyond those boundaries when you are getting rejected time and time again?
Yeah. I think there's a few layers to this. If it was one word, it'd be purpose. Like knowing it, having a deep connection to purpose, for me, that is the one word. You could almost write a book on what's behind that word for me personally, because it's really layered. Like purpose is beyond a purpose statement. I think it is many things, and I look at what actually drives me, and it's mission and vision. So mission around, we started this podcast talking about the 2 extremes: extreme consumerism, extreme poverty, and helping, literally save and impact lives around the world. That is the mission, and I'm all about it. But then the vision I see for this organization is 100-fold, 1,000-fold what you and I see as today. And for me, when I see something, I find it very hard to unsee it. And it's there. Like, if you looked at our business, you'd say, oh, you're just in Australia and New Zealand. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, sort of today. But tomorrow, in my head, it's everywhere. It's in every bathroom, every cafe. And so it's that vision of the world we are trying to create, and then the mission, why we're trying to create it. That's a huge driver. for my own purpose. And then even in the book, I talk about family, I talk about faith, I talk about all these other deeply, profoundly personal things that drive me. So why did I get up again and again and again and again? Well, I think I knew my purpose, my why, and it wasn't just to start a company or just to sort of make a product or make a little bit of cash on the side. This went real deep, and that coupled with having some really good people around me who'd remind me, Daniel, but why are you doing this? Do you still believe in it yet? Can you still see it? Go again. I believe in you. You can do it. It was so important back then, to be honest with everyone. Like, it is so important today. I'm honestly finding it harder sometimes today at scale than we did 10 years ago. And I've got those same people and others going, come on, I believe in you, go again. And I'm like, I needed that more than you know.
It's fascinating, because I think there was one point in the book where you referenced that you were literally on the ground with your stomach churning in a world of pain, and then you had a chat with your mentor and he said something like, just think about what's going to be happening in a week, or something's going to happen. I can't remember the exact quote. And then a week later, you're in Germany receiving an award.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's having that belief behind you.
Yeah.
So how important has that been for you to have those constant voices, whether it's family, friends, mentors, that are constantly reinforcing the message that, Daniel, you're doing great, you're on the right track?
It is so crucial. Like they're like, I'm talking about multiple times a week, I touch base with people in my life on this, because it is so crucial. And really what people provide is perspective. So when you are caught up in it, when you're so close to it, people provide perspective, and we need that, because as good as we all might think we are actually not great at perspective, the ability to step back. And I actually think it comes probably with age and experience. You know, we were talking as a team the other day, and one of our younger team members was just talking about just how much change there is at ThankYou, and almost this feeling of internal change fatigue. And one of our more experienced sort of global experience business, team members, he was saying, well, it's interesting. I look for change and I love it. When it comes, it's like, yes, here we go again, which is almost the opposite. But he goes, it's actually been my experience. I used to dread it and go, not again. And now I hunger for it and I see the benefits of it. So I think perspective and that wisdom, it's so important. And you need people who can call you blind spots and who can encourage you, and you have to listen to these people. Absolutely.
So you've just touched on perspective. And I think just hearing what you're saying, a lot of what you're saying has got to do with, I think, internal mindset.
Yep.
And having the right mindset to be able to listen to obviously what people are telling you, take it on board and change your approach. But how important has it been for you in having the right mindset? Like I said, not only from having perspective on things, but also being able to get up and come to work every day and face rejection after rejection and just keep on persisting.
Yeah. I mean, in one sense, the whole game, is won and lost in the mind. There's that saying, I'll probably mess it up, but it's something along the lines of, I can't even think of it, but the sentiment behind the quote is, whatever you think you are, you are. It's like whether you think you're successful or a failure, you are right.
I think it was Henry Ford. I think he said, whether you think you can or can't, you're probably right.
Yeah, that's it. Well, good on you, Henry Ford. You're a legend. But there's so much wisdom in that, because the game is won and lost in our mind. And so mindset is so crucial. And that is a journey we need to own. One of the greatest traps to anyone starting anything or making ideas a reality or dreams a reality is a victim mentality. That victim mindset of, look what the retailer, or look what that person did to me, or look what that kind of, I'm a victim in this. No, that will destroy you. You will never make it. You actually have to own everything. In fact, our greatest successes at ThankYou have come from us owning and not passing the blame. At year 3, we could have said, well, no retailer gets it. The market's lost touch, corporate this, corporate greed. We could have passed the blame and no one would have blamed us. Oh, you tried so hard for 3 years. You put in all your energy. You were too early. You were before the kind of social thing really took off, and good on you for trying. No, we didn't pass the blame. We owned it. We said, this is our responsibility. We have to find a way, and we will find a way. And it was that resolve that led to some of our greatest breakthrough campaigns. I get invited to speak like these rooms around the world, and they're like, wow. And I'm thinking, that just came from us owning our own stuff, owning the really dark place we found ourselves in, not shifting the blame, and sort of working our way through it. So mindset is so crucial.
So critical. And you mentioned before about owning or taking ownership and responsibility for your own, I guess, your own actions and your life. Sort of a lot easier said than done for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Any advice for people for them to be able to have perspective and to change their mindset so they can take ownership?
Yeah. So like you can never blame the market. You can never blame the business part. You can never blame, you can't pass blame. And I'm not talking about beating yourself up, because that's a very dark place, and I've been there, and it's bad. Like, you can't do that either, but it is a sense of, I will not pass this on. I grew up in a family that is like, my dad is like the eternal optimist. Like, if you had a car crash and bumped into him, like, he'd get out and he'd be like, oh, look at this weather. Isn't it beautiful? It's not raining. That's great. Great to meet you. We would never have met this is great. What's your name? Like, and you'd almost be like, are you, what's going on here? But he was just so optimistic. And that really, where I saw that come through, is our family went through some really tough stuff. But Dad was always able to find the silver lining. He was always able to put his focus and our family's attention on the good that could come out of this, or the tiny bit of good there was. And that in me has built something that I would say is almost like this positive bias. Like, all right, cool, awesome, great. What another opportunity, someone gives you criticism and you're like, oh, thank you for making me a better person. I will learn from it, and it can come across almost fake, but I actually think there is something deeply profound in always making sure that your first foot out is, okay, what is the positive view on this? I'll look at the negative in a minute, and human nature will always swing us back to the negative, but we've got to focus on that.
So what impact do you think being around your dad and growing up with him being an eternal optimist has had on you personally, and also how it's affected the way that and the direction that you've sort of taken ThankYou?
Yeah, look, a big effect. My dad and my mum. My mum is such a deep encourager. She will message me and call me. She's like, Daniel, I pray for you every day. And like, she doesn't say that like a kind of a throwaway. Like, she genuinely cares daily. She thinks daily. And that support from mum and dad, it's really been important. And I realize I'm lucky. Not every kid in the world gets that. But I think as individuals and as a society, we have a role, all of us, to be that support to the next generation. So kids grow up in families where they've got no parents, or one or two, whatever the situation. We actually have a role in nurturing the next generation and encouraging them and supporting them. That's what I got. I got encouragement. I got support. I also got a fair dose of reality, which was I never liked at the time, but was really helpful for me. And I'm grateful to my mum and dad, because they taught me boundaries, and I am the person that really needs to learn and know boundaries. Like, I'm a boundary pusher. Actually, mum said to me a couple of weeks ago, because I'm like, Mum, our son, so Jedediah, he's a boundary pusher. And so I said to Mum, I'm like, Mum, like, was I that bad as a kid? Like, what was I like? And she goes, well, let me put it this way. Every day you woke up, you would check that all the boundaries still existed. You'd go to bed, and then you'd check the next morning. You were continually pushing. I think mum and dad did a good job at shaping that and curbing that. At times I thought it was completely unfair, and they're the worst parents in the world, but I'm grateful for it, because today at ThankYou, we push boundaries, definitely. But we also know that there are lines, and there are important lines. And, particularly in an organization like ThankYou, that's such a public organization, we can build something in 10 years. It could come down in 10 seconds based on integrity calls and a whole bunch of stuff. So, yeah, I'm really grateful for that foundation from them.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So we'll transition into, you've just mentioned about pushing the boundaries and boundary pushing.
Yeah.
So this is one of the most fascinating things that I took out of reading your book and from listening to some of the other talks that you've done. was that a big emphasis on you personally and the company is pushing boundaries. And I think one of your chapters in your book was called High Five the Status Quo in the Face with a Chair.
Yeah.
So that's obviously a big belief for you. So where do you think all of that came from, and a desire to challenge the status quo? Because I've got literally a list here of 1,000 quotes that you've got from the book which emphasize this. But where did that come from?
It is such a good question. Like where did it come from? I don't know. I was... my mum's a teacher, and to her disappointment, I think I came home from school when I was younger. I said, "Mum, I feel like my job at school is just to make sure school is entertaining for all the students." She's like, "That is not your job. We pay for your education. You will learn." But for some reason, I naturally just was a bit of a boundary pusher, and that landed me in the principal's office quite often. We're on kind of first name basis, and in fact, one of my friends in primary school, I never realized this till I grew up, but he was the good kid. And he kind of got assigned to me. I'd get to do special projects during class. I'd go off to help rebuild something in the library. And it wasn't until years later I grew up going, he was my minder. And I was out of the classroom because I was too disruptive. So I think in me there was this sort of disruptive thing. And at its core, there is an element of probably justice driven. Like anything that's unfair for myself, or even Justine, our co-founder, and also my wife, like she is so justice driven. If something is not fair, like it burns her, it burns me. And really at ThankYou, it is this deep idea that, hang on, the world's not fair and it's time to flip it and make it fair. Each of our campaigns, yes, they do push the status quo, but the design of all of them is to make it fair, and that's probably at its core. So this idea of equality, this idea of closing the gap, I think that's where some of this comes from. It's not just let's be cheeky for the fun of it. There's always deep purpose behind it, and I think I've seen a lot of that in both her and I over the years.
So you just mentioned the world's not fair, and there's still a lot of inequality that's happening around the world. What's your initial gut feel or your vibe of what's happening globally at the moment? Do you think there's a shift that's taking place?
Yeah, yes, I do. I think there's a shift, and I think that it is healthy. It is it's important, and it's going to take a lot of people being willing to change again and again and again. Change is constant, and it needs to be. I think that thanks to social media, while it cops some criticism, it has opened up the world. We are more transparent. We learn facts quicker. In the same time, we distort facts quicker. And this is kind of the watch out. Like, I saw, today, like we one of the things that really, really gets to me, it actually really upsets me, is facts out of context, blowing up to headlines, and they distract us. I actually think, yes, there is hunger for change, and yet we are more distracted than we've ever been. And we will put more attention into a Kardashian break-in or breakup versus, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them, I'm just saying that, we've got some of the world's greatest crises on our front doorstep. It can't even get into the media because where we've decided to put our attention. So I think there is a movement of change makers globally. I think we've probably got some work to do on maybe less clicking on clickbait and more clicking and going deeper into how do we solve some of these really complex divides on our planet.
It's very challenging, and like you said, you've just articulated it very eloquently about, to use the Kardashians as an example. We've got a world that's constantly consumed by clickbait and The Bachelor and this other absolute garbage. And then, like you said, we've got all of these serious issues at hand.
Yeah.
How do you think we can try and get more attention or more traction to some of these things? Because I know it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and a lot of it's probably got to do with our individual behaviour and our own perspectives and the choices that we make. But is it? How do you think that we can, as a whole, try and sort of change that a little bit?
It's a good question, because I think the most confronting thing and the easy thing to do would be to pass the blame. So say, oh yeah, but the media, the media, social. Yeah, but that's a reflection of what we're clicking on. That is a reflection of what we're interested in. And I'm using we as the royal we as a society, but that is where this stuff comes from. And I even find myself sometimes going, oh, that's interesting. Like, yes, I'm reading about a founder that lost the plot, and I'm reading up on the timeline, and he said this on this day and this on that day. And I'm like, oh gosh, that's really interesting. And I'm like, hang on. A, how do I know even half this stuff that is even in context? B, why am I so fascinated by this guy's failure versus what he's built over a decade versus what other people are doing? So I actually think this is probably one of the most confronting things to us as humanity, to go, whoa, where are we putting our attention? I think the world needs a wake up. I think it needs a shock to the system. And I think, yeah, there's some big shocks politically, socially, and it's happening. And it's almost like in different sectors of society, we're going, oh, that's ugly, that needs to change. And I think there's probably a few shocks left to go, because I do think that we are, good news travels very slow. I know that because we pump out good news, and it is hard work to get cut through. It is hard work. If we have anything even slightly negative, whew, boy, does that fly. And I think we've got some work to do on that, because there's a lot of good stories that need to be told, and they're not being heard.
No, totally agree. And like you said, it comes down to that negativity bias, which unfortunately majority of the mainstream media tends to focus on.
Yeah.
You just mentioned before about distractions with all, the clickbait and all that sort of thing. Particularly for you being an entrepreneur and starting this business and making so much change, how important is it for you to rid yourself of distractions? And, in this world now where everyone's on social media, it's 24/7, we're online, how do you remain free from distractions?
Yeah, look, it isn't easy. I think it's funny because sometimes distractions lead to great ideas and great moments. And, I follow some amazing people and organizations, and it becomes inspiration for ideas. But here's one of the kind of things I've built into my life that has become a real anchor. Every fortnight, so every 2 weeks, I'll take a day. I call it my blue sky day. And there is no social media, emails, phone. I got my phone on me. I'll get a call if I urgently need to take it. But it is my day out of the office. I climb a mountain. I get to water. I get away from it. And I think about, all right, where are we really going? And I'm thinking more probably about like working on what we're doing, not just in it, because I get caught up in it every day. So for me, that's great. I love flying. I fly so much, and it hurts. I mean, I've told myself I love it. I love flying. I love airports. I love it. I love it. I love it. And this is me trying to hack my own brain, because there's a part of me that doesn't want to say I love it. But I'm one thing I do love is just to be offline. And I know now we've introduced Wi-Fi on flights, and I'm resisting that, because I'm like, no, this is a space to write, to create, to dream. And I love getting up above the clouds, above the rain clouds some days, and you're in the blue sky, and you're like, all right, what does this problem look like from 30,000 feet? And with a bit of perspective, some of our greatest storms turn out to be literally that, a storm that passes. You're in it, you think this is the death, this is the end. Actually, from a different perspective, there is no storm here, and it's a powerful metaphor, but it's how I live.
I think it's fantastic, and the fact that you actually dedicate time, every 2 weeks for what you call your blue sky day, just to take time out to chill out. You have your phone with you, but it's all switched off.
Yeah.
So I know that's a big philosophy of Google as well. Is they've got there, I think 80% of the time you work with Google, and then 20% you can focus on whatever you want. And they've had a lot of innovative breakthroughs have come through from that model for them. So for you having that sort of 1 day every fortnight to take time out.
Yeah.
You mentioned obviously, metaphorically, you get 30,000 feet up, and it allowed you to take a different perspective. How important has that been for you in terms of your clarity of thinking? And, have you had new ideas or breakthroughs that have actually changed the way that you've done things here?
Yeah, big time. Like the Coles and Woolworths campaign, that idea came from walking through the bush, literally, like one of these blue sky days. And for me, it's a deeply profound day. Like, I talk even in the book about my own faith. And so for me, there's this part of the day that is both kind of physical. I got a notepad and I got a pen, but I've also, it's this sort of spiritual kind of just get away from it all and dream and think. And in that, I think some of my best ideas have dropped, and some people are like, man, you're a genius. And I'm thinking, well, I'm getting a lot of credit, but to be honest, it feels like it wasn't even my idea. It feels like it was almost dropped in. Like it was just like, I didn't even know, where did that come from? And so I subscribe deeply to the idea of create space, you know, and it's been a really pivotal part of the journey. And my greatest regret sometimes is getting so busy that I don't have time to think and to create. And I'm trying to forever kind of work the other way.
That's amazing. And I think there's actually a name for it now, a medical name. I think it's called nature deficiency syndrome or something like that, because obviously majority of society, we're cooped up in offices, we're not getting exposure to the sun, you know, we're not being in nature. And I think it's probably making a lot of people depressed, you know, but I think it's fantastic that you're actually taking time out to do that. And it's interesting that you mentioned, obviously, that walking through the bush gave you the inspiration for the Coles and the Woolworths campaign. Again, to the topic that we talked about before about, you know, you're constantly challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
On marketing campaigns, you've done some pretty interesting marketing campaigns over the last few years, which have really challenged the existing model or the way that marketing is being done. Like, I mean, even I think one of your first campaigns you did was what you called the 400 campaign.
Yeah, that was old but good.
Yeah. So which was, I think, if you just want to quickly explain what that was.
So we wrote a letter to 400 influential people. We picked a whole bunch of different segments and categories, and we just said, hey, look, we don't have the budgets. but like, here's our idea, and we're asking you to use your influence to help spread the word. And that was like 9 years ago. Interestingly, we launched in New Zealand 14 weeks ago with a campaign we called the 300. And we almost like this correlation between the two, but we made a baton. In the baton, we put 2 hand washers and we put a letter to New Zealand. We said, dear New Zealand, we're going to take a big bet. We're not going to launch ThankYou New Zealand. We're asking you, New Zealand, to launch ThankYou. And we're asking you to use what's in your hand, your influence. As a school kid, as a CEO, as an influencer, as a parent, part of a parents group, use what's in your hand to help spread the word. And the 400 opened doors years ago. The 300, we had people like doing dance-offs in supermarkets. One guy jumped out of a helicopter, or airplane at 20,000 feet holding a hand wash, records a video. We didn't pay for that. They covered everything. They used what was in their hand, their influence. And that is really at its core the idea of ThankYou. Use what is in your hand, the time, the energy, your career, your passion, your money, to make an impact.
It's amazing. And it's interesting that you said, obviously, all these campaigns that you've done, so the 400 was one of them. There's a few other which we can quickly touch on, but you're putting the power in the people to make the change, which I think it's a really powerful tool.
Yeah.
And not only, like you said before, you've obviously got the unit from a marketing perspective, you've got the user-generated content aspect of it with them creating the content, but you've also got them demanding for the retailers for them to stock your product. So, and it's really interesting because you get them to buy into it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's been critical. And that's one thing I definitely noticed about a lot of the language that you use in your marketing campaigns and the language that you use in the book is about creating that buy-in process. How important do you think that's been for you in your success?
Yeah, I mean, look, language is so important. Words are really important. We have to choose them wisely. And, we is a very, very powerful word. I think I is a little bit of a... to be honest, it's a word I try and avoid. Sometimes you do need to say I went to the toilet versus we went. There are moments, but I think we is sometimes a better reflection of what's actually going on. I hear people get up on stage, well, I did this and I did that, and because of I'm like, oh, okay, but like there's a whole team behind you, and there are others involved. And ThankYou. This is we, and for Justine and myself, we are right now, we've got co-founders, we're here, we've got an amazing team, but we all feel like, and even Jared, one of our co-founders who finished up recently, but for the three of us, we felt, man, this has got to go on beyond us. This is not a project, this is an important idea. We need to steward it well. We need to contribute with everything we've got, but then build it for others to build on that. So, look, it's part of our ethos. ThankYou only works if we, as a group of consumers, back it. If one person bought our product, we'd make not enough money. It doesn't work. This is a story of we. I think, I just think that's the heart of who we are.
I think it's fantastic. And one of the most interesting aspects of the language that you've used all throughout your book, which I found was fascinating, was a lot of people tend, like you said, we spoke about the negativity bias in the media, and a lot of people, when they think of an idea, they go, oh, but what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? And one thing that you just said, well, what if it does work?
Yeah.
And I thought that was brilliant because it sounds so simple, but like even just, having that shift in your mindset and how much that can change, the possibilities of things. And another thing, like, so off that, because I think that came off the back of you were talking about when you're going into businesses and doing a lot of pitching.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's some fantastic stories in your book about pitching. What have you learned from going into a customer like Coles, Woolworths, or a distributor or a manufacturer and pitching an idea?
Yeah, so look, the biggest learning is probably that the idea itself, and there's a great quote I read once, an idea isn't worth much. Its value is found in its execution. And every time I've gone to present an idea alone to someone, it usually doesn't land. But every time I've gone to present an idea with momentum, usually we're not even pitching the idea. Like we're sharing our idea with the momentum, and it's almost the other person going, wow, I mean, that's exciting. Here's what I could do. Here's what we could do. I'm thinking, and that is our model. So momentum behind ideas is everything. The supermarkets, did say no to us for 5 years. We then went back to them with the same idea, but this time with momentum. Now, the momentum was a little bit controversial. We launched a video on YouTube called the Coles and Woolworths campaign. And those who know our story, it was a bit wild, but we asked people to upload a post onto the supermarket's Facebook page, saying if they stock ThankYou products, that you'd buy them. And people did. People sung songs, they rapped, they danced, they uploaded their support. And both Coles and Woolies, I think, were blown away by the support. 2 helicopter pilots flew helicopters, one in Melbourne and Sydney, above their head offices with these huge signs that said, hey, Coles, thank you for changing the world, in brackets if you say yes. Hey, Woolies. And Peter and Jeff, they flew for free, these pilots. They used what was in their hand to make a difference. But it was the people power. I think, though, from a retail perspective, if you're sitting there watching helicopters above your head office, you're watching the media, you're watching social media, what you're actually seeing is momentum. So when we're in there talking about, hey, here's this opportunity for you guys, it's an opportunity with the momentum. So for anyone starting anything, idea, dream, business, you've got to find a way to get momentum. It is the hardest thing to do, but it's the most important thing. Because with momentum, you can literally ask for things you could never ask for without it. And I find that my job is to build momentum. And then my other job is to not lose it. Mm-hmm. And we've lost it at times, and it hurts. You can feel it. And it's the great opportunity and challenge of any leader.
So the word momentum, you guys have obviously done some pretty interesting marketing campaigns, and that controversial Coles and Woolies one that you did was obviously beneficial in giving you momentum. Not all businesses can take that sort of leap of faith and have those sort of out there campaigns.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to individuals and also other business leaders to try and gain momentum in whatever it is that they're doing?
Yeah, look, I think that the campaign's an extreme example, but here's another example that's smaller but really equally as important. When we first started ThankYou, I went around asking for funding. I was trying to get people to back the idea, and no one would. And I'm like, this sucks. Like, it's a good idea, and no one's backing it. This is where everything changed. Instead of trying to raise funds, we tried to get momentum. So we met with a factory, and those who know the story, we found a guy who said, yeah, sure. I mean, if you can find a way to sell it, yeah, I'll make it for you. Then we found a big corporate who was willing to donate some bottles, which was cool. And in one sense, it was big. It was 30,000 bottles. It probably was only $3,000 cost to them. But and that is definitely something. But having the credentials of that huge $1 billion corporate plus a factory, then when we went and presented to a distributor, we said, we've got a factory, we've got this big big corporate on board, and we are looking for a distribution partner. And next week, we've got meetings booked with others, but we came to you first because you are the biggest, and here's the opportunity. And the guy's like, wow, this is amazing. I'm in. Don't worry about going elsewhere. I'll back it. I'll take 50,000 units from you. Then the next week, I'm literally going back to some of those people I knocked on the door for funding. I said, hey, so we really need funding in the next 2.5 to 3 weeks. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. We've got a factory. We've got Visi. We've got our first order for 50,000 bottles. And if we don't get the money, we are. And now they're seeing an idea with momentum, and they backed it. Now, some could argue, well, that's a high-risk strategy. Like what if you didn't get the money in 2.5 weeks? Yeah, but we were never getting the money without the momentum. It just wasn't happening. So what people don't see is that same methodology is how we build the business today on a whole bigger scale with a whole bunch of bigger numbers and bigger risks. Now, we have great risk management and risk committees and boards, and I'm not talking about recklessness, but the same approach of create momentum and then, the money comes, the resource comes. That is our approach.
So interesting with momentum, because as part of, I think, creating that momentum with consumers is also getting them to buy into the vision.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of what you focused on earlier on in the book. And I think it's really important because you've used the vision not only to get people on board, but also other businesses and partners, but also employees, but also consumers. So how hard was it for you, or what advice would you give to people trying to create a vision? Because it's at the moment, in business, it's sort of like this elusive term that everyone uses. Oh, this is my vision, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But you've obviously created one that resonates with people, with businesses, and people are bought into the idea.
Yeah, look, I think people buy into vision, but it's kind of weird because they, even in sales or in a pitch, people buy into you almost before your vision. I think sometimes we're pretty quick to throw up the vision statement or here's what we're doing. I'm actually all about let people in on you. And so I'm not talking about make it about you. I'm talking about authentically. People need to understand. I will talk about why we do what we do before I talk about what we do. I will talk about my feelings and my kind of drive before I start talking tactics. Like it's, I think, yes, people buy into vision, but it's got to be delivered in a way that is relatable, that's simple, that resonates with them. And, over the whole journey, I've probably learnt just the importance of refining what you say and how you say it. People are like, oh man, I heard you did talk. That was amazing. I'm like, yeah, but you weren't at all my talks. You weren't at that one talk you did that just totally failed. But man, I walked away from that going, don't say that again, and don't try and be a comedian. That was silly. What were you doing? And I was trying to, so you refine what you say and how you say it, and you've got to be willing to do that. Yeah.
I think that comes back down to what we spoke about earlier about mindset, because you said, this is a quote from the book, you said, our ability to learn from mistakes will determine whether or not we succeed.
Yeah.
And then you said on another point, you said, if every time you fail, you ask why, you then ask yourself, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing for people to do, to have that time to stop and reflect on what's happened, why it's happened, and how they can change their tactics or their strategy.
Yeah. And look, I know it's not easy. I know, because right now we have gone through some of the greatest setbacks in ThankYou history now, like not even in chapter 1, you read about it in chapter 2. And I'm literally right now, like one of the pieces of paper or documents I have to write tomorrow is lessons learned. It's for the board, it's for myself, it's for our team. And actually our team are kind of contributing in all different ways. But for me, I literally need to go, what did we learn here? Because this has hurt emotionally, physically, like it's stretched us, even financially. It's like, okay, but like, so that is now either an investment in our future or it just takes away from our today. And the only way it's going to be an investment in the future is if we stop, we learn, and then we go again. So, I know it's hard, but you have to do it.
I know you've obviously got your blue sky days as well. And, some people have got meditation, some people have got yoga. Do you have any sort of anything that you found that's worked for you in terms of being able to stop and reflect? That's been, where you can really sort of find out and discover those lessons learned? Yeah,
like I think for me, when I think about my faith, this idea and my background and my faith is as a Christian and believing in God, and I think to me it's this understanding that it's not all about me. I didn't start this. I'm not going to finish it. There's a higher power, and God is God and I am not. I'm not God. And that sounds funny, but it's actually really powerful. Some people, we get into this mindset of like, we are everything. We are not. we don't know everything. We have such a finite view. And so for me, a time of reflection is both thinking, it's also asking questions and prayer and reflection, and this, this feeling, almost like this humble feeling of like, wow, I'm but one of many, many people on the planet, many who've come, many who will come, and I'm also not the first that this situation's happened to. I'm not the first. I won't be the last.
Yeah.
And not to get isolated in this, victim. I'm the only person. This is the worst thing that could have ever happened, and no one else has gone through it. So for me, that is a real reflection time.
Yep. Beautiful. So we'll start to wrap it up a little bit. But one thing which you spoke about in the book was the importance of having a mentor. And the one thing that resonated the most with me from the whole book was you spoke about time travel.
Yeah.
And you said that mentoring is the only proven form of time travel that you can readily access, and that over a coffee with a mentor, you can learn one piece of wisdom which may have taken that person 20 years to experience.
Yeah.
How important has it been for you to have a mentor?
Yeah, so crucial. And it's funny because you can get mentored personally and from afar, from podcasts, from books, and I'm a big believer in both, because there is so much wisdom in so many stories, and you're right, it is like time travel. The great challenge, though, to the receiver of the advice is to apply it. Like, it's one thing to hear it, it's another thing to apply it. And I think that is the great challenge to the receiver, the listener, is go, okay, you just told me that. Yeah, I know we got some annoying noise in the background for all the listeners, but we'll push through. So we it's that thing of, okay, you just told me that. Am I going to reject it and go, yeah, well, that's because that was what happened back in the day. That's because you're from a different generation. Or am I actually going to go, hang on, yes, you're not talking about digital. You're talking about analog or some other old school thing, but you are talking about the same leadership principle, or you are talking about the same thing that actually I can learn from that. Now, I need to apply that tomorrow or next week, and if I don't, I will never learn. So it's the application of what we hear. That is what separates you've met them. People are like, I listen to every podcast, I follow everyone, I go to all the conferences, I achieve nothing. Then some other people maybe don't hear as much or get as much input, yet achieve so much more. It's because they're applying. So it's the kind of listen and apply, learn, go again. That's the key.
Fantastic. So you mentioned before just then about podcasting, and or part of mentorship is obviously from that external, not directly, but externally from podcasts and from reading.
Yeah.
What are you reading, or what do you listen to?
Oh man, what am I reading? That's such a good question. I literally have the last month dropped my reading bowl. Like when you start out the year, I'm like, I'm gonna read a book a week, I'm gonna read a book a month. This last month I've got like 3 books. I'm halfway through and I've parked them. But here's what I would say. When I think about books that shape and change me, John C. Maxwell, he's a leadership guru. 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, that really helped shape me as a young leader. What's confronting is, even as I get older, it's all the same. It's like, oh man, this stuff is real, and it carries on. Seth Godin for me has been such a pivotal just mind and thinker. He wrote Purple Cow. Well, he's written 19 best-selling books, but Purple Cow and Tribes were 2 really fundamental books for me. In fact, if you look at ThankYou, you'd be like, I see the Purple Cow concept coming through. I see the Tribes thinking coming through. And it's just, I really resonate with that. And it's great marketing, but it's a great leadership book. And, I was really humbled. Seth bought a copy of chapter 1 a couple of weeks into our launch, and I wrote fan mail, like, dear Seth, oh my gosh, like, I'd love to meet you one day. And he ended up picking me and Jared up in his Tesla in New York. We went to his house, and he was talking in the lounge room. I'm like, oh my gosh, you sound like the podcast. Like, you're the guy. Like, and that was an amazing moment. And Seth's thinking has been really pivotal to me. And it's a great book, Do Purpose. And Do Purpose is really about brands that want to change the world and make a difference. And it's a picture book. It's just pictures and words. You can get through it so quick. But I look at even one little page that is the core of ThankYou. It's 2 rules. Rule 1, make great product. Rule 2, never break rule 1. And rule 2 has an asterisk. Never use a good cause to sell an average product. That's what we live by. And every time we break that at ThankYou, it's over. So there's some books that come to mind for me. And yeah.
And podcasts, you into podcasts at all?
Yeah, look, I have been a little bit. I can't say I'm an avid podcaster. I get to speak on them, which is cool. But for me, Lewis Howes over in the US has been awesome. I love Gary Vee's approach, but I think for me, I often find myself listening to a podcast that a friend will send and say, check this out. Andy Stanley, his leadership podcast has been brilliant for me. Actually, that is one I've probably over the years really stuck to and has helped me lead the team. So it's awesome.
Yep. And if you could give one message or one bit of advice to business leaders, say in the corporate world, what would it be and why?
So the piece of advice would simply be, just because this is the way it's always been done. This is just because it's the system, because this is what you inherited, because these are the rules, it does not mean they are. I know you're taught they are. I know it feels like they are, but they aren't. The best way I can describe this is when we launched Chapter 1, we flipped it, we rotated it, we printed it essentially the wrong way around. And when I was challenged by someone, like before we printed, they're like, but millions of books are printed the other way. I asked them why. They didn't have an answer other than, well, there would just be a reason. Now I wonder, how many things do we do because, well, there just would be a reason. Now, I am sure there is a reason, but to be honest, I don't care. With respect, we changed it because we wanted to get cut through. If you're reading a book upside down or the wrong way around on an airplane, it'll get cut through. Every person who walks past, every host, every hostess. That was the point. The book was a metaphor to make you feel uncomfortable, and it did that. We didn't create a star-shaped book. So if you're listening from a corporate and you're like, well, good for you, mate. You're a startup. You can do whatever you want. You're a founder. We played within the rules of a book. The book is still the same size and shape as any book, but within the rules, we challenged everything. So my final thought is literally, within the rules, challenge everything, and then maybe sometimes break them.
I love it. And if you could give advice to your younger self, what would it be and why?
It's hard because I need to give myself this advice today, but I would say enjoy the process. Like, lighten up a little bit, enjoy it, really properly celebrate the journey and the wins. I wrote about it in Chapter 1. I'm trying to get good at it, but sometimes for me it's the gap between the vision of where I believe we will be and where we are today, and that gap is so big. I'm like, but I do need to enjoy the process, and I have learned that over the years.
And what's something you'd like to do more of that you're not currently doing? And what's stopping you from doing it?
Look, probably a hobby. Time with family is like the priority at the moment. It's outside work, time with family, and even time with my local church, helping out. Like, I want to give more than I'm giving outside of work. But then a hobby. Like, I've talked a big game for a while about, I'm going to get into kite surfing. I'm going to be a kite surfer. I haven't done it. I made it to the snow this year, snowboarding once. It was good, but that's not a hobby. So I'll get there.
Yep. And so what's, for you personally, what's next? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years' time, as well as the ThankYou brand?
Yeah, look, for me, I reckon I'm on my deepest learning journey as a leader, and I am asking harder questions than I've ever asked about myself, about what are my strengths, what are not my strengths, what is my lane, what is not my lane. And I hope that the leader or the person I am 5 years from today, both in the business, professionally, personally, is someone who is playing to their strengths and not trying to overcompensate for their weaknesses, and not trying to, be everything to everyone. I need to become better at saying no. I've got a lot better, but I need to be even better to protect family time, to protect what I'm really, really good at. And yeah, that's a learning process, but I'm on the journey.
Awesome. And where can people find you for your own personal social media as well as all the company information?
Yeah. So Instagram, Facebook, Instagram, I think, I'm at Daniel M. Flynn 88. I think. Good luck. But Daniel Flynn on Instagram. ThankYou Oz. ThankYou NZ on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And we'd love you to support us, follow the journey. We got some big stuff coming up in the next few years, and I can't wait to share it with people and for more people to join on this mission.
Awesome. I'll put all of the links in the show notes in the description. So
awesome.
Key messages. It's been a fantastic podcast, and I'd really love for this help as many people as possible to get this message out there. And if you can help support, you've got all your products that you can purchase. But particularly, I think for those for listeners to this podcast, if you're curious and you want to feed your mind, seriously go and buy the book. It's one of the best books I've read. So
awesome, mate.
A lot, like I said, it's a time traveling book. You got your last 10 years of experience. It's been fantastic. So Daniel, I really thank you for your time. It's been fantastic. And I wish you and the company all the best.
Mate, thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this inspirational episode with Daniel Flynn. I'm very grateful and appreciative he's been able to share his wisdom with us. And the one thing which I found the most interesting were his blue sky days he has every 2 weeks to switch off from the world and allow his creativity to flow. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on your app and share to any of your friends who you think may be able to benefit from this. I'm always looking for ways to improve this podcast and make it a better experience for you. I'd be extremely grateful and appreciative if you write a review on your app and share your thoughts with me. If you like the podcast and want more information, you can head to our website, feedmymind.com.au, or you can check us out on social media. We're at Facebook at feedmymindau, Instagram at feedmymind, or Twitter at feedmymind_. Thank you, and stay curious.